So to get down here, I have to go down this like little canyon, and that's kind of what it's like to go into Grounded Spirits. Grounded Spirits is a place where we're venturing into our inner world, and I just hope that you have taken or that you're ready to take a step into your inner world to talk about what we have planned today. So we're going to be reading this book. It's called Mother Peace. And we're only going to be looking at like the preface and the intro today. And then actually, let me back it up a little bit with that. We were in the middle of our dream series. And then last time we talked about Jung. He talked about the archetypes. And so I became really enthralled with these archetypes that he came up with because they are so similar to tarot, as this book points out. And they're also found in astrology. Like, that's why I love astrology so much, because astrology is all about learning the different patterns of the world. I like to use it as a framework for all the information that is in the world, or a framework for all the different parts of the self. And yeah, so that's why we're going to look into this book. Just the intro alone has been incredible. It's called Mother Peace by Vicki Noble, A Way to the Goddess Through Myth, Art, and Tarot. It's an absolutely incredible book. Like I said, I've only read the beginning of it, but it just seems really great. And then I also read a considerable amount, and by read I mean like audiobooks. I did my nails yesterday, so I was listening to the Red Book by Carl Jung, and the author, like the intro itself was like 6 hours long, and then I finally got into the actual book, but the intro was so informational, where it was really great to understand like where Jung is coming from, how he came up with these ideas, what processes he took in order to receive these conclusions. So I'm going to be like sprinkling that throughout our talk here. So like I normally do on Grounded Spirits, we kind of just go line by line. I'm not going to go line by line for all 20 pages, but I do want to go over some of the different things that I learned about in here that pertain to our exploration of the inner world, of the dream world. Jung likes to talk about the way to get into the inner world is through dreams. So he did a lot of work with dreams, but he also talked about automatic writing, and I've done that. I like to see it as channeled writing, where you're literally channeling spirit as you write. And that's what I did for my book, Monterey, A Passage Through Water. It is a very colloquial book, meaning anybody could pick it up. There are so many, like I write the way I talk in that book, compared to how I write academically. Obviously, it's completely different. In my book, Monterey, I don't even use quotation marks when they speak. It's italicized, and there's a lot of like thought that goes into it for each character. But it was largely channeled, even though it is my life, it are my experiences. It was largely channeled, and now what's so cool is 3 years later, I can reread that book, and I have, and I'm learning things from the book that I didn't know, but I'm like, I wrote this, so how do I not know it? And I think that it's because it was channeled, that every time that somebody, even including myself, reads this book, new things will pop out. And that's what Vicki Noble, that's what Noble really talks about in this book too, that through these images that are part of tarot, that they spark different things for everybody, like as an individual. But if you combine all those little interpretations, you get this fuller, more collective way to interpret these cards. And that's kind of what she gets into here. So to begin, we're going to largely be looking at the Great Mother, which is one of Jung's archetypes. He liked to think of his soul as female. He said that males have a female soul and females have a male soul. And the way that I can see that, and I've talked about this so much, God is the individual and he's male, so he had to separate himself from the collective in order to become God. And female energy, femininity, is just everywhere. And so that's why women, we have to have a male soul in order to have that individual self, to have that ego. And people say like ego's bad and you have to have all these ego deaths, and you do have to have a lot of ego deaths. But ego itself is not bad. Ego is just it just means I. It just means that I'm an individual and I have to take care of my needs, and then I can take care of your needs. It's like when you go on an airplane, they say, put your mask on first, then help the people around you, because if you're dead, you can't help anybody. And the same thing goes. You can't give from an empty cup. You have to fill yourself up first, and then you can give your love or your help or whatever. But the problem that we have today is that when it comes to money, that's why we have such a large wealth gap, is because people don't know when's enough. They think like, oh, once I start making 10K, I'll be good. Then you make the 10K and you're like, oh wait, maybe once I start making 100K a month, then I'll be good. And then you do that, and then just it's never gonna stop. So it's really about going within and being able to fill your cup internally, and then it will be just easily shown in the real world, in the outer world. So like I said, we're going to talk about the Great Mother. The book is called Mother Peace, and she starts off the book by talking about the patriarchy and how horrible it is, as we all know, how horrible capitalism is, as we all know. And she just like goes hard on saying like how horrible like the violence is and like all the horrible things of the world. And she's not wrong, like there are a lot of horrible things in the world, but everything happens for a reason. And I firmly, firmly believe that. And the reason why we had to have this patriarchal rule for so long is because the same way that women today, the feminists, are saying like, oh, I want to do that too. Like I can do what a man can do, like no problem. Just like how they do it today, that's how men did it a long time ago. Like, oh, how come she gets to be the shaman of the group? How come she gets to do all of these things? And so they wanted to give it a try. But the problem is that when a man rules, it's an individual, like I was saying with God. God is masculine energy and he rules alone. Now, God, he does have, like, if we're talking about Catholicism, he does have, like, the Trinity, so he has Jesus, and then the Holy Spirit, which is female. But largely, throughout history, men who have ruled, they rule alone, and they're always on alert. They're always paranoid that someone's just going to kill them, and then they're going to be the ruler, and then someone's going to kill them, and then it just kind of goes on forever. Whereas women rule, it would be a collective, it would be a group. It wouldn't just be one person. It wouldn't be an isolated role. It would be more of a community. And interestingly, Taylor Swift kind of talks about this, where she feels like she's a monster on the hill because she feels like she is a woman who has to rule alone, that has to be up on top and not be able to be a part of everybody else. But I think it's because she believes that she has to be in her masculinity in order to be successful, which is what we see like with the man. Like if she was a man and she was doing everything that she's doing now, it would be cool. But because she's a woman, then it's bad. And it's bad because she's not meant to rule like that. She's meant to be in her collective girl group, which she did try doing. She has all her friends and it's like women power and all of that. But I think that it had to start like from the ground up, where if you're listening to this and you're starting something a movement of some sort, if you want to be an artist and put your art out into the world, you have to start at the grassroots level and like really have like your group as you rise up. What comes to mind is the Proud Family when Penny becomes famous and she's like, I don't want to be at the top without my girls. Like, I need my girls. So it's like that kind of stuff where you need to have this feminine energy be a collective instead of a singular. And that's what Noble talks about here in the book. So then she gets into tarot and how tarot is meant to just heal. And it's healing because tarot, so the major arcana, which is part of tarot, so the tarot deck typically has the major arcana and the minor arcana. So the minor is the one that has like the swords, the wands, the chalices, and the pentacles. And then the major arcana has 22 different pictures of different, largely people or qualities, actually largely qualities, sometimes people, that go through a journey. And so we'll get into that in a little bit, but I just wanted to like start it off and like up here, and then we'll get into like all the nitty gritty. So arcana, so the major and minor arcana. Arcana means that it's like a treasure chest where it's like something that's hidden, something that's protected. She also goes into like how Noah's Ark, like arcana, that it was supposed to keep safe or like keep encased these terrestrial beings, humans, while the world flooded. The other one is like with the female body, that like our womb can be considered an ark, because it holds like something precious. And so arcana and tarot are a vessel for salvaging spiritual wisdom. So that's why they're called like the major and the minor arcana, that they're safe. It's like something like a little like a treasure chest where there's gold inside of it. And going back to Jung, he was talking about that he really got into alchemy because he thought that alchemy was a transformation of the self, that we had to learn how to change lead into gold because we are made of lead and we want to be gold. Gold is like that divinity. Lead is something more common that is found on earth as our human bodies are, whereas gold is like from the divine. So that's like what that is all about. But at the heart of it, it's just to heal. That we have these images that show us our journey so that we can heal. Let's go into that a little bit. That this journey, it has to do with the Navajo. And the Navajos, they have this 4-step journey. That they say, here, I'm just going to read it. This is on page 21. It says, according to Donald Sandler, Navajo healing follows 4 principles, which I believe also apply to the natural cycle of the major arcana. The first is return to the origins. So when I first started my spiritual journey, as you can go back and listen to number 1 of Grounded Spirits, that I had to go back and figure out who I am. Why did I make these different decisions? Are they my decisions? Were they my parents' decisions? Were they like schooling decisions, the state, the church? Whose decisions were they? And if they weren't mine, how do I figure out what I want so that I can be the best me? And so one of my first episodes is the root chakra. How much back to basics can you get than the root chakra, you know? The root chakra talks about how to be grounded, how to feel safe and secure. Every single war, every single act of violence, anything bad, 9 times out of 10 has to do something around security and safety, which means the same thing basically. Everything comes together. Everything comes from the basic need to feel safe and secure. So people will do these atrocities in order to have this feeling of being safe and secure. So So that's the first step. The second step is confrontation and manipulation of evil. So this is the part of a spiritual awakening where you have to confront your demons. You have to confront your fears. And that's what we've been learning with our dreams, that our dreams are a safe space for you to be able to confront your fears. I feel like all fears, they just need to be told that they're safe. Again, going back to the safety. One of my favorite books, The Game of Life and How to Play It by Florence Scovel Shinn, she talks about this woman that was so afraid of a ladder in front of the bank, and that she wouldn't go to the bank, even though she desperately needed to go to the bank. She wouldn't go because there was this ladder, and she heard like the whole like old wives' tale, like don't go under a ladder, because like it would be bad luck or something. Well, anyway, she finally like had enough courage to go bank. Even with the ladder, when she gets there, the ladder's gone. And so basically what Florence Scovel Shinn is saying, that once you confront your fear, it'll disappear. We also learned this with our dream stuff from 2 weeks ago, that you just have to confront your fears in your dreams. Don't run away from whoever's trying to chase you in your dreams. Confront them, and then they'll disappear. And I think that also goes just like with your own self, that if like, oh, okay, here we go. If your body tells you, hey, I'm thirsty, and you're like, okay, like I'll get you water in a bit, like calm down, and then you forget, then your body's going to keep reminding you, I'm thirsty, I'm thirsty, I'm thirsty, until you get it what it needs. And if you don't, then it can get really bad, and you could even die from not drinking water. So that's like an extreme example, but you get what I'm trying to say, that if you don't listen to your body, if you don't listen to what's going on, then that's what turns it bad. It's not that nothing's bad, it's just ignoring it turns it bad. Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. It's kind of like with water. If you leave water in a bowl and just leave it outside, it will accumulate algae, because anything that is sitting still, especially water, so water is like emotions, if you just leave them there, they're gonna go bad. But if you are using them, the water is running, then there's a less likelihood that they'll go bad. Number 3, death and rebirth. So this is like what we're talking about with the ego deaths and stuff, that you need to be able to be okay with change. It's interesting how people, once they have their safety, so let's say you get $1 million, you're like, okay, cool, now I'm safe, I'm good, I'm not gonna do anything, I'm just gonna sleep all day, I don't have to worry about anything, I have $1 million. After a while, you're gonna hate just lying around doing nothing. You have to do something else. And I feel like that's the whole point of life, is how do we keep changing, and not changing because we're going to get $1 million, or keep changing because that's how we're going to find love, but changing because that's just who we are. One day I like dancing, the other day I like skating, then I like swimming, then I like hiking. I don't know, you are allowed to like everything. And so if you want to learn more about how to find out what you like and how to go into that, I have my other podcast is called Ela Radio, and I'm like redesigning that, so stay tuned. But basically what we're doing is understanding how learning about these different things will be able to actually help you as a person and help you individually, to become a better person, if that's what you want to do. So the next one is the 4th. So that's the restoration of the universe. And so they're saying by this would be like the healing part of you, that if you are starting with the first one, returning. So if you want to heal, you're starting with trying to figure out who you are, going through the confrontations and manipulations of evil. Then you have this death and rebirth period to constantly be changing, to constantly be leveling up. So whether that's in your mind or your spirit or your body, however you feel like you need to level up, that's what you're doing by the death and rebirth. Because if you don't die, like that part of you doesn't die, then you're going to be holding on to it. And a lot of people hold on to things that they don't need to hold on to. And that's the whole point of full moons, is the full moon, it's like it illuminates what you're holding on to that you don't need anymore. It's like holding on to like a 50-pound backpack and it's just full of rocks. What do you need the rocks for? You don't. Like, let that go. You don't need it anymore. And then, like I said, the fourth would be the restoration of the universe. So this is like when you actually heal. So this is when you're actually good. So what's interesting is that this is the Navajo way of healing, but she's saying that that's how the major arcana is too, where it starts off with returning to the origin, so becoming the fool again, admitting that you do not know everything. That's what you have to start off with. So the first card of the deck is the Fool. So we'll get into that next week. But then it goes to the confrontations and manipulations of evil. So that would be like the Strength card or the Hanged one. Then into the death and rebirth. So this would be like the star and the moon that point the way to the eventual and inevitable restoration of the universe, which is represented by the sun, the Judgment card, and the World card. So it's showing that even through the darkness, there's always going to be light. We're always going to end up where we need to be. And that's what Thoth taught us in the Emerald Tablets. The other way that this gets represented is through the moon. And so these moon cards have helped me so much with that. Because obviously you see the moon if you're outside at night, you know? So it's like, why not learn more about it? And so what I love about these cards, I'm not sponsored or anything, by the way. I just really like these cards. I'm just gonna like randomly just show you one. So this Nourish card, has a crescent moon, and so it's like, okay, well, what does that mean? And just like how we have these 4 ways of the Navajo healing, that's also how it is with the moon. First, start off with the new moon. You go back to your origins when you were nothing. Then you start bringing out your light a little more. You get to your first quarter. Then you get into the full moon. Then you go to your last quarter, and then you go back to the new moon. I hope I'm saying that right. Like I said, I'm still learning with that. But basically, we see this pattern throughout literature. So we could think about Joseph Campbell's The Hero. We could think about it through the chakras. You start you start off with the root chakra. In order to get safe, you go all the way up to your crown chakra, which is connecting to the universe, and then it starts all over again. Or not so that it starts all over again, but that you're constantly needing to balance these things. That is something, like going back to now to grounded spirits, that is something that I have been working on recently, these last 2 weeks, that I feel like I'm at this point where I'm leveling up, but I guess I'm scared that the way that I was on this opposite for such a long time, and I'm like right here at the line, like these are the 2 polar opposites. So if you have point A and point B, right now I'm like in the midpoint, and I'm scared that if I cross this midpoint, that I'll just end up on the polar side and like go all the way to B. And I'm like, I don't want to go all the way to B. I want to be balanced between A and B. Like, how do I stay here without staying here, while still leveling up, while still changing, because I'm human. So we all need to grow. But I feel like that's the part where I've been struggling right now. And so I think it just always goes back to our mission here at Grounded Spirits, that we need to be secure in who we are and know who we are, so that we know we're not going to go all the way to B. We know we're not going to overdo it and cross boundaries, or our own boundaries, or others too, that we know we're not going to do that, because we are here in the center, and that's where we belong. So that's what I've come to the conclusion there. But again, it's easier said than done. So that's where I'm at there. Okay, now I want to go to our tarot cards. I have a different deck today, and I thought these would be perfect for today's conversation. So these are the Arthurian tarot deck, and I love these cards because well, first of all, this booklet, again, I'm not sponsored, I just wanted to tell you about it. This booklet is so cool because look how thick this is. So not only do they show you like all the different like what the cards mean, but then they have like a little like class, if you will, that like will walk you through how to use the cards, and it's like split up through the different seasons. It's really cool. But that's cool. Actually, the first one I pulled up was a Grail Maiden. So I believe the Grail is supposed to be like the cups, so like the water, emotion, and then Maiden, the woman. So again, going back to Mother Peace and like being part of this collective, using our emotions. Jung talked about that too, that if you only use your thoughts and you don't use your emotions, you don't feel anything, then you just get lost in your thoughts and they turn bad. But if you only feel and you don't use your thoughts, then you're an idiot, you're a fool. So it's like, it's always about balancing the two. You need to feel, but you also need to think things through and use your reason. But yeah, so these are these cards. So I use these cards for like adventure, to like understand what my day is gonna be like, or to understand like how the day went, rather, is what I actually meant. And so that's what these cards have been really good for, but I felt like these would also be really good for the archetypes. So we have King Arthur as the Emperor, Guinevere as, I believe she's the Empress. The High Priestess is somebody else. But yeah, it's like these different ways that women can be viewed. Oh, so let's see where we're at on this journey. Alright, one came out. We'll do it one more time. Alright, so we have the Grail 7, and we have the Spear 2, which is also like the wand. So this is like earth energy, and then the water energy. So again, grounded spirits. Let's actually read what the book says about these. So Spear 2, Grail 7. I was hoping we were going to get some major arcana ones, just because that's what I've been reading about, but these are cool too. Alright, so just give me a moment to put this all together and then I'll pull up. Alright, Spear 2 says control, mastery, maturity, attainment of goals, dynamic drive, courage, determination. And then the Grail 7 says illusion, clear vision, intelligent, fantasies. So it's that your wildest dreams can come true if you just learn about yourself. Like if you have the determination, you have the motivation, you'll get the mastery, and then your wildest dreams are going to come true. So I think it's a lot about balancing that masculine and feminine energy that I've been talking about for these last few weeks, that we've been learning with our dreams, that our dreams are a way of balancing this masculine and feminine energy. But what I was saying last time was, well, why don't we help them out? You know, like help ourselves out and balance it ourselves. So Jung would do this by talking to his soul, and he would refer to her as a girl. And he would just ask questions. And recently people have been asking me, like, how did I get to this point on my path? How did I gain all this knowledge? How did I do all of this? And I mean, if you've been with here on the show for a while, you'll know that it would just be me talking to myself. But the way that Jung talks about it makes it seem less odd. But what's funny is that throughout his book, so the Red Book, he didn't publish it. It was published in 2009. And so he would just like write, it was just like a journal basically that he would write for himself. But that the author who wrote the introduction and who translated this book, he was saying that he thinks that Jung was trying to publish this eventually, because he says dear friends at the beginning of each thing. So I guess it's kind of like a dear diary, but the friends means that he was planning on sharing it with the public, but that he was scared because he didn't want people to see him as crazy, or like, you know, like crazy as like a mental, like needing to be institutionalized. What he said was that the difference between somebody who has a mental disorder versus himself is that people with mental disorders, they actually let these visions or these fantasies, that's how Jung would call them, these fantasies, they would let the fantasies take over. I saw just a snippet of Yellowstone today, and it was this guy who choked out this girl, he killed her, and he was like, it wasn't even me, it felt like I was floating above watching myself do it. And that's like a classic way of that, you when you let your fear take over, you're not you anymore. And so that's what Jung was talking about, was that we need to always be ourselves. And that's like the main point about here at Grounded Spirits, is like, learn about yourself, learn who you are, so then this doesn't happen to you, so that you can explore these different realms, explore your inner world without letting it take over. It's about knowing who you are, and then you don't have to worry about these things. So that's what Jung would always go back to. He's like, I don't let it take over. I am very conscious of what's going on at the time. That's why he would write everything down. He even said that everybody should have a little red book where you write down anything that happens to you. I've been doing it through voice memos and here on the podcast. I mean, that's how I started Grounded Spirits. I always said this was a place for me to document my spiritual journey, and a way to help you on your spiritual journey, because we are spiritual beings. So like, why are we not looking into the inner world? Which is what my dissertation is all about. And you can learn more about that at Ela Radio, the other podcast that I was talking about earlier. So let's go back to Mother Peace here. There was just so much that I wanted to go over here. But that basically, the whole point is to balance these masculine and feminine energies so that we can master how to be an individual and be part of the collective. So how can we be selfish in a good way, in a respectable way, in a way that doesn't cause harm to anybody else, but that fulfills our needs and brings us happiness, like true happiness, not happiness that can be taken away at a moment's notice. How can we be so ourselves and so individual that we just are? We don't have to try anymore. We can just wake up and be and get paid for it. So how do we balance that with the spirit part? The spirit part, again, is that feminine part, and that's the part that has been missing from civilization for thousands of years, I dare say. So what she says, most of us these days find ourselves less than fully well, physically or mentally, somehow out of balance. We can sense our dis-ease, but that's how it's written in here, dis-ease. So we're not in ease, we're not in flow. There's disruption. So we can feel our dis-ease, but don't ordinarily know the solutions to it. If we knew how to make ourselves well, we would almost certainly do so. The great gift of the goddess is such a healing. To the individual, she brings personal well-being and an experience of fully living. To humanity, she could bring the harmony that comes with a recognition that we are all connected in spirit to this planet. So that's exactly what Grounded Spirits is about. How can we be our individual self while being part of a community, of a family, of nature, of everything? Oh, so then this part was so cool. So then she goes into shamanism, and how shamanism, that it originated with women, that women are supposed to be the heads of households in the spirit realm, and we're supposed to help the world with this spiritual essence, whereas men are the providers. They are the head of households for the material realm. And so right now, like I was saying earlier with the whole feminist thing, that so many people are like, oh, I want to do this, I want to do that, and be like a man, but we're not supposed to. Like, that's not who we're meant to be. And so, yes, we're equal. Men and women are equal, but they're equal in different ways. Women are more connected to the spirit. Men are more connected to the physical, to the material realm, to this real world, this outer world, and women are more connected to the inner world. But that doesn't necessarily mean that one is better than the other. Both are needed. And especially now, the feminine energy, the inner world information, this knowledge is desperately needed, and that's how we can solve so many of our problems. If we look at the calendar as part of the inner world, so apparently the first calendar was a woman marking her cycle. And so it says, it's on page 7, religion, science, and measurement of time were not separate from the body and the biological or fertility mysteries of sexuality and reproduction. They were one knowledge. So it wasn't like, oh, I have to get this degree and learn about that and learn about this to then come up with this one knowledge. It just was. And that's like the whole point. What I'm talking about is like, how can we get to a point where we can just be, where we don't have to exert this soul crushing effort, or the self-sacrificing effort. We can just be ourselves and everything just works out. This is such a crazy, not a crazy, this is an interesting example that that there's poop, right? People poop, animals poop, whatever. But for a fly, they don't worry about like, oh, where's my next meal gonna come from? Like, poop is inevitably gonna find them, or they're gonna find it. And it's like that. This is like the worst example, but it's the first one that I thought of. But that there's just so much abundance of everything. So everything that a fly needs can be found in feces. So why can't we find everything that we need in the world that we've created for ourselves? That's such a weird example, but just going with the flow, trying to go back into that ease that I was saying earlier. So the whole point of Noble in this book, Mother Peace, is that she's saying we go back to the goddess. By learning about the self, by going internally, we're learning about the goddess, and the goddess will be there for us and help us. And this is this Mother Earth, and that this is why we turn to astrology and tarot and these different things, that they're all just archetypes, which is what we've been learning with Jung's archetype, and they're equal. Like the archetypes that we see in Jung, or the archetypes that we see in astrology. So for instance, the Great Mother in Jung is the like Cancer, the moon. I would even say Virgo. These parts of astrology that represent the woman, this kind of energy. I would even say like Scorpio, like all the water signs, I would say. Pisces, I feel like, is a little more masculine. But Scorpio is definitely female, so that would be with the 8th house. Virgo with the 6th house. Cancer with the 4th house. So stuff like that. And like that's how we can get back to healing. Also with dancing is how we can get back to healing. Here's the part about the power that I was talking about earlier. This is on page 8. It says, this power keeps the individual ego aware of its connection to the group and its responsibility as a member rather than as an individual in isolation. So again, the individual in isolation was the masculine, or the patriarchy, the male rulers, whereas the female ruler would still understand that she is part of the group, she is part of this world. So with that, I've been really thinking about this question: does the government love you? And I think a lot of people would say no. Yet the government needs you. So why isn't the government trying to make you love them more, or for them just to love you more? And then everything would get better. I think everybody just needs more love. It all just comes down to that. And when you say something, you're going to do it. So if you tell yourself that you have to drink a liter of water every day, and then that's how you can start building your confidence, because you're building that self-trust. And I would disagree with forcing yourself to drink water or forcing yourself to eat, forcing yourself to do these things. That you have to allow yourself to love it, to want it. If you force yourself to go to the gym and then you stop because you are forcing yourself, you're going to gain the weight back. You have to go because you genuinely love doing whatever it is. Whether it's lifting weights, going swimming, doing a Zumba class, I don't know, Pilates, whatever it is, you have to love it for it and not love the results. You know, I love my Carlos Castaneda. I bring him up almost every single episode. But I just finished book 4, Tales of Power. And in it, Don Juan was saying that he was like revealing everything, like why he did what he did, like how he taught Carlos to do the different things. He was revealing like his methodology of showing him the sorcerer's description of the world. And he was saying that he had to get him to a point where he was doing these things not because he thought it was going to make him a sorcerer, but he was doing these different activities like walking around the house 3 times or like just dumb stuff like that, to get into that habit of, for every action you're not going to have a reward, but so that's why what you do decide to do it with your full heart. In the first book, Don Juan says, follow the path that has the most heart. And at the time, Castaneda didn't know what he was talking about. But then by this time, he knows exactly what he's talking about. That you have to follow the path with heart. That so many times Carlos wanted to walk away from Don Juan, walk away from this sorcerer's world. And by sorcerer's world, it just means a place where you can feel and you can understand what the spirits are telling you. And by spirits, I don't necessarily mean like ghosts, but like the spirit of the land, the spirit of the plants, of the animals, and how to be connected to them. Carlos could have walked away at any moment, yet he kept coming back because he couldn't see himself not doing this. He talked about one time where he decided he was going to quit. He was done. And then he went back home and all his friends were busy and he was just alone. So he ended up driving like an hour to go to a movie. And it was a movie he didn't even want to see. And it sucked. And he was like, but even this is better than sitting at home doing nothing. But then he was like, but is this a better life than what I would have if I went back to Don Juan? And it wasn't. So he went back and then he was able to find the totality of the self, which is the commitment that you have to yourself, all the different parts of you, which is what I talk about in Ela Radio, so go check it out, with polymathy. There are so many different parts of you. Some parts of you like this, others like that, others don't like this, others do like that, whatever. The totality of oneself is giving yourself the option to disintegrate. All your different cells can go into the direction where they want to go, where they feel like they have the most heart. And you give yourself that option. And what Carlos found is that they all decided to come back to him. They didn't go off and disintegrate and turn into sparkles. That they came back and chose to be with him. And I think that this is like in relationships or in a bunch of different things, that you want to be around people who choose you. You don't want to cage somebody or force them to stay with you. And the same thing goes for your own self. I want every single one of my cells to want to be part of me. If they don't want to be a part of me, then bye, And I think that goes for people, that goes for any kind of work that you do. Everything that you do, you want it to be intentional and you want it to represent the best you. And then that is how we balance out this masculine and feminine energy. That is how we become better dreamers. He also talks about dreams in that Carlos Castaneda series. So if you want to check that out, it's incredible. The first book is called The Teachings of Don Juan. And like I said, I just finished the fourth book, Tales of Power. So yeah, it all comes back to how can you be your best self? And that's what Grounded Spirit is all about. And then how to heal, so that healing is a natural process. The body already knows how to do it, and I think that is what Don Juan was also teaching Carlos, because Carlos was astounded. Don Juan is depicted as this like 60, 70, even 80-year-old man, and Carlos is in his 30s. Yet Don Juan can walk. He has like endurance. He has like the ability to walk faster. He has like more energy than Carlos, and Carlos is like, what? Like, how? You're an old man and I'm like fit. How do you have so much energy? How does your body do this? And he's like, because I listen to my body. I take care of my body. And so yeah, so the body already knows how to do it. It's just getting out of the way and letting the body work, trusting the body and taking care of it. So then she talks about the high priestess. So the high priestess represents the moon and the power of female periosity. The empress, ruled by Venus, symbolizes love and active female sexuality. And the strength card is the strength of the mind and the heart, which is the matriarchal consciousness. So if we would heal the body, we must first imagine it well. If we were to heal the planet, we must envision peace. So it's like this practical reality. You have to know what you want and then go for it. But the thing is, if you don't know what you want, then how can you go for it? So that's the whole point of Grounded Spirits too, is knowing who you are, being so grounded in who you are that then you can actually go for your dreams and achieve them. Like what the card said today, you know, your wildest dreams can come true if you allow them to. Then she goes into, this is now on page 21. She talks about when you become split, so whether it's the masculine and feminine, or become split, like what I was saying, like half your body wants to do this decision, the other half of the body wants to do this. So when you say like, part of me thinks I should do this, but the other part of me says I should do that, this is a split. And the split only happens when you're unrooted. Like it literally says it in here, like I highlighted it. That, because that's the whole point of Grounded Spirits. I keep saying the whole point of Grounded Spirits, but it's true that Grounded Spirits, it's about staying rooted and flying high. So how do you stay rooted? You become one. You have the totality of the self. You know exactly where you're going, what you're doing, and why you're doing it. You take responsibility for your actions, and you don't let people step on you. You have your clear boundaries and you stick with them, and you become a man of action and a woman of action, same thing, right? What you say, you have to follow through. And that's how you build the trust. That's how you build the self-confidence. That's how you build all of it. And that's how you become so rooted in who you are and know why you did every action that you did, so that you don't have regrets. And not that like, oh, I have to figure this out so that I don't have regrets later. No, but it's just the point of knowing what you're doing and why you're doing it and sticking to it. That's what I'm trying to get at. So when somebody becomes unrooted, the first step is to start creating. So again, going back to who you are, figuring that out, and then being able to move forward. And I think that this is also what happens with our dreams. Our dreams are part of our imaginations, part of that creative juice. And yeah, that's why I feel like it's so important to learn about dreaming, because it's one of the first steps of healing. If you know how to dream, then you know how to create. You know how to bring stuff out of the inner world and into the outer world. That's how you find your way. So here's just like a little bit about the major arcana. There are 22 Roman numeral tarot cards that represent cosmic cycles and creations. And it's a larger than life journey that the soul must undergo. Jung would talk about the esoteric quest of the alchemist was a transformation of the self, like I said earlier. So it all comes down to healing. It's to produce a cure. And then I love this definition of the goal of spiritual development, it says that the goal of spiritual development is to become conscious of the soul and to reunite with it. So if you're a man, you're trying to reunite with your girl parts. And if you're a woman, you're trying to reunite with your guy parts without letting them take over. So I think that nowadays, a lot of people just let it take over. And then that's when you get confused, like, who do I like? Do I like men? Do I like women? Or who am I? Am I a man? Am I a woman? And it's because we're trying to balance this masculine and feminine, but we let one take over, and then we don't know who we are. So again, it's all about coming back to the self, who you are, and becoming rooted. And then she goes into every single civilization, from the Druids to the Egyptians to the Mayans to the Arctic shamanism, that it's all to help people understand the purpose of human life on the planet and to live harmoniously as they took part in individual and collective evolution. So again, it's about the individual with the self and the self with the individual. And so the major arcana attempts to illustrate basic universal laws that structure the natural world. So again, with that healing cycle, it's about these images that are depicting what's going on in the world around us. So yeah, that is what I have for you today. And next time, we're actually going to go into the different archetypes, because I think that they're super important, especially as going into this whole thing about dreaming. So we'll talk about the Fool next time. And with the Fool, like, how can we use this Fool energy to help our dreaming? It all goes back to dreaming because, like I said, that's the first step of healing. And so I went in this whole other way where I just accumulated all of this knowledge. Oh, with that, 2 weeks ago, the last episode that came out, I was talking about how my brain capacity is like this, has a large amount of information, and then I cut it off. I must have got distracted with a different thought, but I said that some people only have like 256 gigs or whatever. But that's not to, just because I have a larger capacity of information than other people doesn't mean that these other people can grow to have this large capacity of knowledge. And it also doesn't mean that just because this is my gift, they're gifted in other things that I might be working for or working towards. So that's the cool thing about being a human, is that we are constantly balancing within ourselves, but we're also balancing with everybody else. That every single person that you meet has some piece of knowledge that will help you understand yourself better. That's what I'm saying. You have to get selfish. You have to get selfish. You have to know, what are the things that I need in order to be my best self, so then I can help other people. So seeing by being selfish, you're not being selfish. But it just looks like you're being selfish at the beginning. So yeah, you have to be selfish to understand who you are and where you're going. And then all of your dreams can come true, which at the end of the day is what this podcast is about. I want you to live out your dreams, because then your dreams are going to be helping my dreams out. My dreams are going to help your dreams out. And it's just this never-ending cycle of community and collectiveness while being an individual. So it's all about that balance. And so I will see you next time to learn how to balance the Fool energy and how this relates back to our dreams, about the different archetypes. And once you start looking at these patterns, whether through tarot, through astrology, through academia, once you start picking up these patterns, you'll see them everywhere in all different kinds of stories, everywhere. So come back for that. See you next time. Bye, everybody.